No. Welcome to the Sanborn Regional School District Budget Committee meeting for December 4th. Let's start with our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So
Moving. Mike is on the roll.
hopefully all our members will be present shortly. Can I get a motion to approve the December 1st minutes?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay. And any discussion, any changes needed that you noticed?
Don't say anything.
Okay.
There were several questions that were left opened. I'm assuming we can back to address those.
Well, I'm just approving the minutes right now.
Yeah, no, I know, but there were several questions that were in the minutes that were mentioned. So,
Well, during tonight's discussion, you can reference them. Sure.
yes, thank you.
Yep. So all in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. And we'll wait for the school board update from Micah. I thought if everyone is amenable, that we would move the public comment up to the beginning of the meeting so people can make comments at the start of our meeting tonight. Is that reasonable to you?
Absolutely.
Instead of having them sit for an hour, if you'd like to make comments initially, that would be fine too.
Yeah.
We can do both. Yep. So would you like to make some comments now as well as later on, or? Please come on up if you'd like. Oops.
She was a basketball practice.
Hi, I'm Kaylee and I'm from Newton.
Can you spell your name, please?
Kaylee
What's your last name?
Fortin.
From Newton. Okay, thank you.
If this is about cutting classes, especially for me as a student, a lot of students can like agree with me. VLAX is really hard because it's not as interactive. And a lot of my teachers often switch to like just doing paper assignments because the turn-in rate is way higher. So like a lot of kids, like they don't want to be at school, so they need to like have interactive like stuff to do. And if they have a packet right in front of them, they'll turn it in more than just an online assignment. They'll just say like, oh, I'll do later, if they don't do it at home. So VLAX can be like really hard for those students. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Anyone else? Okay. So tonight, we've been reviewing the expenditures, proposed personnel, program needs, and we are looking for ways to save money, but serve the students with excellent service. Hopefully, some of the sections can be consolidated as they begin to shrink, but that's not our committee's duty. Welcome, Micah.
Hello, thank you.
Would you like to give us a board update?
Yes.
All right.
After I catch my breath. Sorry, I ran from the principal's office, which is not the first time. It's been a while though. It's been a long time. One thing I wanted to update this budget committee on is the incredible progress we heard last night from our director of curriculum, Christine DeRochers, on the progress that we've made in ELA and in math, and to some degree science. There's more work to do in science, and across the board on the K through 12 levels in terms of our statewide testing, the DeepL's testing that the younger kids do. Her presentation last night showed that students over the past, this would have been the, Bob help me, the 24-25 school year, have shown marked improvement in ELA, in reading especially, and in math, across all grades. There are, of course, variations, but the good news is that for many, many of the grades, standards are being met, statewide standards, averages are, we're above or at the places where we should be. So I just wanted to mention that we believed this would be the case for a few reasons years ago. Implementation of new reading and math curricula, especially at the lower K-5 levels, CKLA. We knew that at the time that we implemented these things took time. It's, a new curriculum takes time for teachers to learn, to adopt, and to really get the most out of it. But we're starting to see the fruits of all of that labor. And it's due, of course, to, a past teacher contract. We've been able to hire excellent teachers, retain excellent teachers, and it's due to the hard work of everybody, the administration, teachers, the students themselves, and of course, the parents, guardians, and the community in leaning into the new curriculum and really investing the time and the commitment that we've needed to make it something that's valuable for the students. So I just wanted to mention that and mention that because we had a narrative in the past that we spend a lot per pupil, and where are those test scores? The kids are rewriting those narratives right now. They're all doing a really excellent job, and we're really excited to see, and we're optimistic about the future. And we're, as a board, very, very excited to continue to work with the BudCom collaboratively to continue the upward trend. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Micah.
I was bragging about that on Monday as well, so.
Good. Yeah.
So tonight, on Monday, we went over a list of potential adjustments to the budget, given declining enrollment. I have some updates about the information that we worked with on Monday. Apparently, the number of unfilled positions that I had discussed on Monday has now been reduced to 7. So some people have been hired, for others, some positions were closed. So basically we have 7 unfilled positions right now. And I also got an estimate for the cost per para, which was $75,318 with benefits. So BA Monday provided that to me. And also we discussed the large unexpended balances that we've been seeing in our budgets over the past few years on Monday, but we haven't thoroughly discussed that topic yet. So I thought we could revisit that topic and see if there's anything we would like to adjust for that reason. So I actually looked over the high school class schedule for fall again and compared it to 2017, just to see how many sections have declined over time. And it's main classes that I had noticed. What surprised me was AP US history. Used to have one section with 27 students, and now we have 2 sections with 23. So at one time they did have 27 students in that particular class. So as you can see, over time, the number of sections have been dropping, and that's just part of the adjustment process we're going through every time we have an enrollment drop. And hopefully we can continue to do that gradually as we see this happening, but find ways to accommodate students. I'm hoping by collaborating with other districts in our area to provide the courses that they would like. So are there any other adjustments that the members would like to introduce tonight, or would you like to just discuss the ending balance situation?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
to talk about the proposals that we had for last meeting of reductions in staff. After I left the meeting, I had a long night of thinking about that. And one thing that I want to make an adjustment on is reducing administrators in elementary schools. And the reason why I want to make an adjustment to that, instead of going down to one administrator, I think that it would not be effective to do that, as the responsibility of the two administrators could be completely different. In addition to the fact that if somebody is absent, then there's nobody at the helm.
Oh.
So I believe that we would still need to keep a principal and an associate principal or assistant principal at the elementary schools.
So any other changes to the list I've created? So Shane, if you want to pull up the document, which is the Sheets document showing the list of adjustments that we had discussed. Oh, there it is. I just want to note that oh, there it goes. I just want to note that the instructional aid number has increased now that I have the actual number for salaries and benefits, the 376,590. I added in an additional high school teacher, having found more sections that needed to be consolidated. So I have a new number for the high school teachers. You'll have to scroll down a little bit.
So she put forward
This
instead
is
of one.
20 sections, and I have deleted the 22 unfilled staff sections now that we know we have 7 and not 22. So we cannot actually strike 22 positions because we now have a more accurate number for that.
Dr.
Yep.
Oh,
Not hearable to the.
Oh, sorry. So I adjusted the unfilled positions. So apparently the numbers we're working with are changing. They're kind of moving targets for us. And the VA told me tonight that unfilled positions, I know, are not supposed to be included in the default budget. So we wanted to know, is the default budget going to change now that we went from 22 to 7 unfilled positions? Would that change the default budget result? And apparently it won't. The one we have is the one we're going to work with.
that's a calculation, right? That's made specifically.
So line 25 is a placeholder number. I just wanted to go into my other document and look at the one you had up previously.
Yeah, where'd that one go? One sec. Initial.
And scroll down to unexpended ending balances, if you don't mind. So there it is, right there. Can you go up a little higher, please?
I get it.
Thank you so much. So for 2025, last year, we returned to the taxpayers over $2 million. I took that number and I added in the school care fee that was a one-time fee of $650,000. The 2.5% contingency fund, which set aside, was $671, and the superintendent's one-time payout was $410,000. So if you add those together, the actual unexpended balance total was almost $4 million, it looks like. So I did notice at one of the at some finance meetings, the VA reported that at the end of 25, we had over 3 million to return to taxpayers. That was prior to some of these expenses. So the concern I have is that we have these continuing very large unexpended balances being returned to the taxpayers. And we discussed this on Monday. I don't know if there is a reason other than risk aversion that you're trying to prevent running out of money for a special ed need, for example. But these numbers seem to be getting larger, and I'm concerned, frankly, that this is doing a disservice to taxpayers. So I think we should consider adjusting the proposed budget by a certain percentage before it's presented to the public. I put in a placeholder of 5%, but it looks like over time, the numbers have gone from 6.27%, 3.84%, and the most recent one, the gross ending balance was almost 10% of the budget. And we do have a number of reserve funds, as we discussed last week, and those total $2.57 million. So I know we also discussed on Monday the idea of trying to avoid these large unspent ending balances, but encouraging adding warrant articles to boost our reserve funds, as shown here, for special ed, for unanticipated educational expenses, utility costs. And I know that the members were very enthusiastic about that proposal. So are there any thoughts about a minor reduction in the proposed budget to prevent ending balances that are increasing over time? Anyone have any thoughts on this? Don't all talk at once.
Jim's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
I'll weigh in on it.
Okay.
As the as the base number of the budget increases, that percentage should actually be shrinking quite rapidly. 10% of a $39.5 million budget is a lot smaller than 10% of a $42.5 million budget.
Right.
The fact that we keep coming up with these unexpended fund balances, and which has been used over the years to fund these capital reserve funds, tells me that the numbers that you show, and thank you for having calculated them, are actually lower than they would have been. I wholeheartedly endorse the use of capital reserve funds as an expenditure from the unreserved fund balance. However, this past the books that just closed, having almost 10% that was not anticipated to be spent during the budget cycle is, I mean, that's money, that's 10% of my tax bill, or roughly $1,000. That would have done much better in my pocket or your pocket than maybe getting it back at the end of the year. Therefore, I have absolutely no problem with your 5% and would actually up it to probably 6.25. But I do have my number that, after reviewing the budgets and what have you, I have as a base number for what I would propose for the budget for next year.
In the Matt Angel days, there was a narrative that he was pretty um, adamant about, which was that the retention of certain fund. I don't know. Maybe Marie, maybe you can speak to this, but it was about the stabilization of the tax rate. I don't know how that works because I remember asking for it to be explained to me many times and constantly being confused by the calculus that's involved in what it means to give money back to taxpayers for another, holding this money in the budget and then returning it based on, I think it does something about offsetting the next year. I don't remember. Marie, I don't know how this works, but the prevailing wisdom that I had was that if you budget real tight and you're trying to be exact, not only do you open yourself up to possible shortfalls, which are really dangerous, right? Roof falls in, that kind of stuff. You got no money for it. But also the tax rate would vary wildly from year to year versus being fairly consistent and predictable. I can't really back any of that up with data. It's just what I heard from someone I trust as a business administrator, for what it's worth. I don't know if it's true. I believe it's true. I just don't know how to unpack it for you, but it's something to consider.
I've heard, if I may, I've heard the same theory across several districts. I do know a local district in Rockingham County that had an unexpended fund balance of $18,000 at the end of the year. And this isn't a little tiny district, and that's scary. Because if you run into an unexpected expense that you can't roll to the following year, then you end up, you can't spend it. And that's the problem. So you do want to have that little bit of I think a buffer is a reasonable word to use here for that. So you want to make sure it's there. The idea with that is if you have a certain amount that you're giving back every year, so you balance the taxes so there aren't those fluctuations. I have definitely heard that as well.
Yeah.
And I know that the typical number I've heard is roughly where we have been over the last couple of years. Last year's, I believe, was exceptionally high because there was a freeze put in place on spending right around October when the Bakey situation came to light, with a concern that we would have very high legal fees or potentially district level liability to the families. So that's the way it was explained to me. And when that freeze went in place, that did to a certain extent increase that unexpended fund balance over the course of just last year in particular.
Yeah.
Sort of seems to me that 3 million in a budget is kind of a very large buffer to make sure that everything gets covered.
Well, to Bob's point, it's usually not that. Last year is an anomaly. It's usually about $1 million that goes back to taxpayers. 1.1, so it was 1.5,
I
1.2.
think it's higher on this document, correct?
It should be up there.
On there somewhere.
What we gave back is 2.18.
We make sure we're talking into the mics. Very hard to hear with the projector.
Oh,
So if you use the mics, that'd be ideal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, 2.18 was the amount returned to taxpayers after last year's budget. So, yeah.
Are the not the last several years higher on this document that's being projected here? Okay.
okay. That's
I got
that's
the
that's
numbers from
correct.
you, so.
No, that's fair. I just don't think they were there, so it was a little unclear.
Yeah.
No,
If I can weigh in on buffer, the school board has access to $2.57 million worth of buffering. Covering special education, capital improvements, unanticipated educational expense, unanticipated utility costs, and facilities use revolving account, and a contingency fund. To say that we have to have something, we need a buffer in the budget of in excess of $1 million. Plus all of these, the voters actually supported the creation of and the funding of. I'm sorry, but that's unsustainable. these capital reserve funds were created to be buffers and used as such, with the voters replenishing the monies as necessary. That's a very large buffer. That's actually more than was returned to the school, to the taxpayers this year in the final unanticipated fund balance. So to make the argument that, I'm not suggesting that the budget should end up $18,000 is all that's left. But it shouldn't be 2.1 million or 1.48 million or actually the biggest one was 2.28 million.
Jim, I appreciate
23, 24, there was 681,000 remaining.
Mhm.
And a lot of that money is sitting there now in these capital reserve funds. We can't continue to maintain the status quo. There has to be both accountability and an understanding of balance.
I was just going to remark that I appreciate what you're saying. Sometimes what I've seen over the past few years is that the balance at the end isn't exactly the intended balance, that there are things that are budgeted for that, due to diligence and certain, the work of many of our administrators and staff, we can do for less money than we anticipated. But we don't know that when we're making the budget necessarily. Something comes in cheaper, health insurance all of a sudden comes in less than we thought it was going to be. We've also seen it come in way more than we thought it was going to be recently. So, the idea of a buffer isn't just so we can, it doesn't emerge simply because we want to feel warm and fuzzy. Sometimes it emerges due to good, fiscal responsible spending throughout the year.
I think we all need to keep in mind that when you're making a budget this far in advance for a school district or any business in reality, you're never going to, you have to base your budget on a best case scenario, and you are doing your best. And I'm saying this as somebody who's been in finance and budgets for a number of companies. No matter how hard you try to get as close and limit your overage, it's very common in companies, and I get it. We have some years that there's been a large return. I'm not saying it would be nice to not have that much of an overage, but the reality is you can't get that exact no matter how hard you try. So I think we just have to keep in mind that we have to be careful of how we're looking at this, because we're going to come to that year where if we keep putting these cuts, we're going to have these shortfalls, and then we're going to be in a really bad position. So that's just my opinion from budgeting.
Well, I would like to see a reduction of the total, and it doesn't have to be 5%, but I'd like to see some reduction in the total. Even if it's 681,000, I would like to see some small reduction as enrollment declines. We seem to have these unexpended balances. And I do know that it's nice to have a cushion for risk and uncertainty and unknowns, but that's why the budget committee has endorsed increasing the revolving fund amounts and the special ed trust fund, so that we have a cushion for those needs. That would be a known unknown. So I know that if we reduce this budget, the final budget, by $1 million, that the budget committee would certainly endorse adding significant amounts to these different reserve funds. And we had discussed that on Monday. But just as the school would like to have a surplus, so would homeowners in the area. And I mean, folks without people skills tend to rely on analytical skills, as you can see I do. But I do not think I have no people skills, because I drive around town and I see roofs that are failing. I see people who don't have a lot of money for their homes to maintain them. And when I see these huge unexpended balances, I think the solution is to slightly reduce what's asked and then provide more money as warrant articles for our unanticipated expenses funds. And that would be my optimal solution at this point, because we're going to have another 4.8% reduction in enrollment and over 11% at the high school. So I think we should live within our means and be able to reduce any expected unexpended balance. I know it's hard to estimate what that would be, but I'm just seeing these massive numbers and they're growing, and I don't think it's fair. So.
I'd like to add to it. So I can get behind adding in to some of these funds to bolster them up. That way we can reduce down our proposed budget for the following year. I honestly believe that Special Education Expenditure Trust Fund should be a minimum of $1 million. I'm surprised that it's not even that high. With the fact that you never know what's going to happen with
One out of district placement
changes in expenditures
Right.
for special ed, and we all know that. I can get behind the capital improvement and maintenance reserve fund. We just talked at the school board meeting about a potential $7 to $10 million cost for a roof of this building. That's a significant cost, and it's not something that this tax paying group is going to be able to just absorb within 1 year. That's going to have to spread out over, 4 or 5 years to be able to afford that, because I'm not gonna be able to take that hit on my taxes. There's just no way. It's a lot of money in 1 year. So I believe the 2.5% contingency fund should be higher as well. I believe that should also be at $1 million as well. But with those increases in those funds and having that fundage on hand, we should be able to reduce our proposed budget then. So that way we know we still have money in reserves to be able to fund, unexpected situations.
How's that work?
We would
How-
have to
how do-
put in a
Warrant article.
Warrant
article to do a raise on those, which I'm all for. I'll back it 100%.
So I guess my concern with that is, I'll put it simply like this. We know the roof needs to be replaced.
Mhm.
We don't know if the warrant article will pass,
We don't.
right? So there is significant risk in that. Of course appreciate the sentiment of I totally support increasing those funds, right? But there are known issues. It's, you see those balances there.
Mhm.
They're used often, right? It's not that there's on the facilities use revolving fund that gets replenished from different revenue sources, right? But it's a revolving is the right word, because there's constantly money being taken out of that for repairs that are happening. This building is 21 years old. So, seeing the balances is one thing. Seeing them dip and go back up because they're constantly being used is quite another.
And that's understood, but that's what
And
they're
to
there
risk,
for.
exactly.
That's what they're there for.
But to risk them not being able to be replenished is risky.
Now, as a newer member of Kingston, I generally don't know the answer to this. In the past 5-10 years, has there ever been a warrant article that hasn't been passed by?
Oh yeah.
A lot.
I've lived in Kingston for 7 years, and I've seen that anything that has a positive tax implication has been passed. Anything that has been a positive tax implication has been passed for the last 7 years. I've watched it. All right.
Well,
There might be one or two that may have not, but just about anything that had a positive tax implication has passed in this town.
yeah, but we're talking about things that would have a negative tax implication.
I haven't seen anything that has a negative tax implication that
Well,
has passed.
any of these articles would have on a taxpayer funding these funds would have a negative tax impact on a taxpayer. It would cost them more money to live here.
That's what I'm saying. So when I say positive tax implication, I mean that it's costing us more.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So what I'm saying is
I
that
was
yes,
making a value judgment.
every
Okay.
year for 7 years that I've lived in this community, I've looked at the results of the ballot, and anything that has increased taxes or would have, an increase in taxes, the tax base, it's passed.
In
Kingston.
Yeah, not entirely. I don't think the case in Newton.
No.
Not so much the case in Newton.
Not the case in Newton.
But I'll speak for Newton taxpayers. It almost sounds like we're trying to, let's make sure we're going to have the money for the roof. So let's put the extra padding over here in the budget because they'll probably approve the budget. But let's don't take a chance on putting it as a warrant article in case it doesn't pass. Is that putting it down in too simplistic terms? That's
No.
kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's exactly pretty much. I mean, and the reason I'll say this, the reason I put it that way is not because I don't trust that we as a community could rally around things that are important. It's just because I think that we have wildly different opinions about what's important, and sometimes the roof's caving in, and we don't have time to debate about whether or not to fix it.
Mhm.
That's the issue.
My question kind of around that then is if we're going to be returning, say, $2 million to the taxpayer, instead of doing that, could we forward that on to the capital repairs that are expected?
I don't
You know, if
think
the
you're
$10 million roof, okay, if we're spending $2.5 million this year, could that extra $2 million go towards that, getting us out of that hole faster?
I don't think we can do that.
That'd have to be a warrant article.
It'd have to be a warrant article. There's a certain amount of money that we can retain
Mm.
from it's the 2.5% for the contingency fund, but by law, the rest has to go back to taxpayers.
No, is that just the contingency fund, or is that like as part of the budget? Because if we're say budgeting, going back up top here for the unexpended balances, again, instead of in theory returning the $2.18 million to the taxpayer, could we have used that essentially elsewhere to get ahead of this problem as we're encountering it now?
If we had created a warrant article.
If we agree.
School can spend them. But the school has not, Pam, I don't want to be. The school has the autonomy to spend end of year funds. And we have not done that for a large number of years. To answer your question. And you are correct. Have to go on water line. And they're typically funded by end of year funds. So that's why there's no tax impact to taxpayers.
So are there any other changes to the budget at this time, or should we just consider a number at this point?
I know I wasn't here on Monday,
Yeah.
so I didn't get to give my opinion on everything. But can we go back to the positions that you guys discussed cutting, please?
Sure.
Can I make one small?
Yeah.
I just want to, on the positions I wanted to mention before, I think it's important for us to know, for the community to know that this committee here is not empowered to decide how the funds are allocated, right? This budget committee decides on a number. These positions are suggestions, wish lists. They're not binding in any way. It's up to the board and the superintendent how those funds are actually spent. Just to level set. I know everyone's, they see the positions cutting. They're like, oh, this is scary. That is, a suggestion. Back to you.
And can you, okay, so, like Micah said, so I'm not specific. I get that why they were put up here is where we thought money could be cut. From a parent standpoint, if we are focusing on that money cutting and where we think it would affect, I would worry that we think about trying to take money from guidance the way we are, especially in the middle school and high school. Like I said, I know obviously we cannot cut the positions, but if that's where we think the money, our recommendations money comes out of, I would hesitate for that. Granted, we are not a overly large school, but the amount of work the guidance counselors do in our schools, as someone with a high schooler, there's already been, and obviously I won't go into details because of privacy, but there's been situations this year that I already know the amount of the guidance counselors were overwhelmed with the number we have with situations that have already happened. So I just think we need to be cautious of what money we're trying to cut. Because as Micah said, we're finally showing improvement as a district, and this amount of money we're trying to cut, it's going to bring us backwards. And I don't want to see us go backwards. I moved to this district because at the time we had a great school district, and I moved out of a terrible school district to bring my kids here. In the past couple of years, it's been hard to watch because I feel like I was going back to the district that I purposely left, and we're finally seeing that upward trend. And I'm hesitant on the amount of money we're trying to cut because I feel like we're going to go backwards, and I don't want to see that for our district. So I just ask that we all keep that in mind as we're really trying to find our bottom dollar here.
So all that slaving over the DOE website for 8 months was for nothing.
No.
I didn't spend a lot of time looking at numbers for the laugh value. I was looking for potential savings as enrollment declined. And I noticed that a lot of the high school classes are beginning to shrink. And I explained that in detail. So I have reasons for the reductions I'm recommending. These reductions are up to the school board and the administration to figure out, but I see that we have the need to, again, reduce class sections. And I think I did a fairly good job of explaining why, but I know I've been getting emails from parents saying their daughter or their son needs a class and they can't get it. And they have an open spot in their schedule and they can't get that class. Well, that's probably going to happen. That's probably going to happen as enrollment drops. We can't have one section with 3 students. It's not affordable. It's not a filled class. It's not optimal. And there should be options for those students, but we do reduce sections over time. And that's what we do when we have fewer students and unfilled sections. So I think my reductions are reasonable. I could have done more, but I was being fairly moderate in my recommendations. So I would like to propose, so Shane, if you could remove the 5% total and see what the total comes up to be. So the 2,051,000 number.
I don't have edit access.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Okay, I'll figure it out right now. Hold on. So
Can you just highlight it all and see if it?
I'm so sorry about that, Shane. I thought you could.
Yeah, copy it to a new document.
Yeah,
Oh, there we go.
2.5.
Yeah, Pam.
Oh, you got it?
There.
There you go.
Oh, 41.
So I just
Line
want to
does-
remove line 25. That's all I'm doing right now.
Yeah, yeah, in the bottom
We
right.
can't edit it.
Some of all the other
Oh,
numbers.
gee. Well,
Can
then,
you
no,
just scroll down a little? Okay.
Trying to still make it legible.
really? Where's your laptop?
Oh, and then there's a,
He already added
40 million. 37. Not the petition, you should be able to.
Well, that he's got the sum down there in the lower right-hand corner.
yeah, Pam, I forgot your, the additions that you had up at the top here.
And at the bottom of that,
Yeah, 1.1.
Shane, can you scroll it up about 5 lines?
Yeah, it's at the, that's the top.
So I'm getting 41,028,910.
Me too.
Okay.
Say that again. Sorry.
41,028,910.
That sounds right. You take 40.
I'm still furious about these ending balances. I think they're completely outrageous.
which ending balances are you speaking
The history of unexpended balances we were looking at.
of? Oh.
We can't hear you.
Hey.
I'm sorry.
Oh. So is there some reason why we can't do both? I mean, they both, I thought we've been talking about making more than just these changes you say here. We're looking at this and saying, we think we can cut this much out of the budget. Here's an idea. We're not saying you need to get rid of one middle school regular ed classroom teacher.
Right.
No,
We're
we have
just
no
saying-
jurisdiction with that.
We're seeing some things that could be cut to save this much money.
Correct.
And I think we also want to be able to say, we think that there are things that could be cut that would save that ending balance. So
Correct.
that we're not holding on to 1.8 or 2 or 2 million for the year and passing it back to the
Are there, I have a question on that.
taxpayers.
And Marie, you might know the answer to this better. Are there, I believe, you see all the money in an unexpended fund balance, right? Can't use that for anything you want though, right? The money in those accounts has to be used for the purpose for which it was put in there by the taxpayers, right? Isn't that the case?
Yeah.
Right? So like
On the
unexpended,
right? Reserve funds, absolutely. They
yeah.
have-
So
But there's this other big bucket of some $2 million of that things that weren't spent.
which bucket is that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is that when there are unexpended funds that are in these expendable trust funds and or contingency funds, they have to be used for those purposes,
Absolutely.
right?
Those have to.
So it's
stay.
not that we can just, we can't just say, oh, we have this other chunk of money sitting there. We can slash the budget and then just push this over because you can't just push it over cleanly. It's got to be pushed over for the purpose for which it was reserved. So it's not a clean, you know what I mean?
It was on one of the other slides before. The 1.8 million that we plan to turn back to the taxpayers.
Mhm.
That's
Shane,
unrestricted, isn't it?
That's what, I'm sorry.
Isn't that unrestricted?
That's unreserved.
Unreserved.
It's unreserved, but I believe,
Actually,
I think your question is whether if I'm hearing you right, is whether the board has a discretion to spend it on what they want. The unexpended fund balance at the end of the budget year. That's, I think, what you're asking. Yep.
Yes.
Wanted to clarify the question for you.
and I believe the answer is yes.
Not the amounts that are in those funds.
I see what you mean.
obviously, since last year, they spent $500,000 on.
Yeah, we know where that went.
The board has the ability to move money around in the budget as it sees. fit.
Yes.
Quite
And
honestly, rather than, thank Dr. Brown for all her work and
No.
effort. I think it needs to be phrased differently. I think the budget committee needs to suggest to the school board that they look more diligently at things like class sizes,
Mm.
administrative employees, the health insurance provider, the use of capital reserve
Yeah.
funds, the charter school income, and most of all, lowering the prospect of enormous unreserved fund balance at the end of the year, which becomes, if you will, almost a slush fund.
That's the fund that I'm concerned about.
Right. That is the largest individual area that I have a concern in this budget. And quite honestly, if the approximately 10% that would have come back from the 2025 year, that was the gross of the unreserved fund balance. If that number was taken off, I mean, that was $4.213 million, which would have made this proposed budget $37,921,000 or $38 million. Instead, it's being proposed at 42. That's a big variance.
So that is another way in which the school board could reduce the budget.
Even though the money goes back to taxpayers.
Correct. I don't think the taxpayers, I guarantee you, taxpayers are not going to vote for a higher tax rate right now in anticipation of at the end of the year, oh, I'm going to get a bonus. That's like, I mean,
The
that's
reason, but last year's money coming back to you now is why your tax rate isn't spiking now.
Uh,
That's why we give it back,
but I'm
to
sure
stabilize the tax rate.
is going to spike.
Do we have projections on that?
Kingston has it. I don't know why Newton hasn't gotten it yet, but Kingston.
Well, we've just had our revaluation, but again,
Hasn't set their rate yet.
we haven't set their rate.
Newton has not, but I think
Kingston
Kingston
has.
did.
Yeah, Kingston has, Newton has not.
Mm.
But that's what that money coming back helps, is the offsetting. and
So let's
stabilization.
create a budget that doesn't have that already built in for next year.
But yeah, I'd like to see $1 million taken off this number,
This- I-
500,000 on warrant articles for 2 warrant articles,
And-
for example.
And if you can't convince voters to vote on a warrant article for a roof, then we've got more serious problems than
And the
any.
voters have consistently agreed to fund capital reserve funds because they see that.
We know what doesn't pass.
Yeah.
Have we had public comment yet? I know I came in late.
We had one already.
We had one? Okay. We should have another probably.
I know Newton historically has been unwilling to pass CBA increases for the salaries, and one of the issues has been that we have small class sizes, and therefore should we give pay hikes if the class sizes are smaller than state average for some classes? So I did present some data at our last meeting, whether anyone noticed that. We're also spending $2,000 more per pupil than the state average. So we are spending quite a bit of money. We're spending it well, but to me, we should take $1 million off this number and have 2 warrant articles for $500,000 each and have the voters vote on that. That would be my preference.
I can get behind that.
You're talking about $1 million off the proposed budget?
Off of the one I've just created
Oh,
here,
okay.
$41 million.
So I've been,
Gets you.
Yeah, I mean, again, that
That would come off of this end of year's fiscal fund balance. If you create warrant articles for the March ballot, it's
Right.
going to come off of the unreserved from FY '26, which Newton did pass last year and Kingston passed for the 250,000 special ed trust fund.
Right.
That would come off of this fiscal 26
Sure.
fund balance. So whatever is left over at the end of fiscal 26.
So, Dr. Brown, what is your number?
This is my current number right here. And
Thank you.
I have the official ballot here in front of me that passed.
And you're proposing reducing that by 1 million?
I am doing that, but I also wanted to mention that I was a little concerned when we were given data about 22 unfilled positions. And we had carefully discussed taking those salaries off of the proposed total, and suddenly we have 7 unfilled positions. So it doesn't make planning easy, but I guess that's just what happens sometimes.
Pam, do we have an exact figure for the total proposed for next year?
Is it just me that thinks there needs to be a motion here at some point?
Well,
I mean,
there
I would,
has to be a motion somewhere.
I would think it would be,
Were you going to have public opinion before
Agreed.
making a motion?
Right. We
Yeah.
have
yeah, I think it would be imprudent
Get the
to
figures
not
right.
have, I think we should exhaust public comment before we motion and deliberate.
We
Yeah.
keep these recommended changes, and
Right.
also
I hear-
notice we've added back in the $985,000 of
They should
the
inform.
superintendent's positional adjustments to start on a clean slate. So
I'll throw a number out.
Pam, can we open it for a public
Can I have
comment?
public-
I think
okay. Public comment, number 2. Name and town.
Jen Lampron, Newton, New Hampshire.
Bill?
Can we go real quick to the other sheet that you had with the class size? Sorry, and I'm not talking into the microphone. If you look at the class
Spell your
section,
name for me, sorry.
Jennifer, Jennifer, Lampron, Lampron, Newton, New Hampshire.
Okay.
So just looking up at your comparisons right here, just a quick cursory view, I can see that you only did calculations where the average spoke to the storyline that you're looking to tell. So specifically in your storyline, you're looking to say class sizes are always going down. But let's just look at that first line right up here. You can see that the average class size went from 16.1 to 18. I can do the calculations in my head. If you'd like, you can do them with a calculator. But what I'm saying is that where you didn't list those percentages, those averages, that's where the class size went up. So it doesn't fit with your storyline. So I think you're presenting data. I mean, anyone who does statistics knows that you can make the statistics work in your favor. It's all about knowing this is the story I want to tell. Here's how I make the numbers work. So let's kind of just mull that over. I'll tell you that when I came into this district, the class sizes for my kids were somewhere between 13 and 17 in the elementary school. And that's one of the reasons why we stayed in this district. I think most parents within the district, it means a lot when you have a lower class size, especially in those elementary years, where you're really forming, that platform and that, those minds and how the children are learning. So the idea of going up to class sizes like in the 19-20 range, that's not favorable to me, and I wouldn't support that. I will also say that your comments about VLAX, it's not a sufficient alternative to offering real live teaching to students in our district. I'd also like to understand why you're so worried about money that's getting returned to the taxpayers. Is it better that we potentially underfund the district in comparison to returning funds? And what do you expect will happen with the reduction in the class offerings and the increase in the class sizes? Will the higher performing students stay in the district, or are they going to seek alternative plans? I mean, the result of that is that then you're going to be driving down average test scores because higher performing students are going to say, I've got an alternative. Why am I going to come here when you're reducing what I have for options? I also agree with Micah's comment in terms of budgeting. I don't understand why you would budget only exactly what you need. I mean, I hope you don't do that with your personal budgeting, because otherwise you have negatives sometimes. That would be terrible. There have been vacancies in the district. So if you're not, if you're looking at the expense and the overage, when we had a vacancy in the district, to me, that means we're underserving children, because unfortunately we weren't able to get teachers secured in positions. And so some of the ways I think we're meeting those vacancies is there's either substitutes or VLACs or other alternatives like that, which yes, are less costly, but I don't think that in the long term, we really want to continue leaving those vacancies. I assume that as a district, to serve our students best, we want to fill those vacancies. Also, in terms of budget surplus, income sources, I assume include from like rent from the middle school and monies from Fremont. What is that going to do in terms of the long term? If you're talking about continuously, reducing the budget when we're not getting those monies in later on, what will that mean for us? So that's just my comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to talk about class sizes increasing because last year my math class had 25 kids, and at one point we ran out of desks and almost ran out of calculators for our class. And so that was a big problem. And then also because of like the gigantic class pretty much, we couldn't focus in class because like all the kids that would talk in class would just take up all the noise space to the point where like half the class would have to go to the math help room just so we could like get our work done efficiently. And during like every test, I had to go to that room just so I could like hear myself think.
Can we get your name?
Samantha Brown,
Can you spell?
SAMANTHA. And then Brown spelled like the color.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samantha Fahey. Same Samantha, Fahey. I have 4 kids. I live in Newton. So I have a lot to say. So the first thing I want to say is that now we're kind of circling back. I kind of binge watched a whole bunch of budget comm stuff, like it was Stranger Things or something. And without the few days or a couple weeks in between watching you guys, you can pick up patterns a lot easier than you can if you're waiting to Monday to today or 2 weeks from now or anything like that. The first thing, now we're saying, okay, we all know that you guys say what budget we can have, what we can't, or whatever, but not exactly how they use it. However, you're using that graphic that you just had up to make your numbers of what you think can be cut. So it's a little bit disingenuous to be like, oh, we didn't really say that we don't need an assistant principal here or there, when you're using those as how to make your calculations. And when you're looking at the graphic that was up, and we're talking about taking an assistant principal from Bakey and from Memorial and taking a school counselor from both of them as well. Those people are the people that deal with the kids who have behavior issues, who are in crisis. We take 2 of those away from each of those 2 schools, we're going to have kids that we're not meeting their needs. What happens if kids, especially kids on IEPs or with special needs, aren't getting their needs met? They petition and they get out of district placement, especially if they can prove that we were meeting their needs. We took 2 people away that we were using to do that, and now we can't meet their needs. We said 1 out of district placement would completely tank our numbers. So how are we doing or even contemplating using that idea to decrease our budget? And that would also increase the work of the principals left, the school counselors left. It makes for a bad work environment we're going to lose more people. It's not like we had a great history of keeping the people that are good in our district. And we're not going to be a good candidate for anybody who wants to come here. We're going to end up with people who are fresh out of school or who are just staying because they're close to retirement and it's too ridiculous to try to move now. Now we go back to talking about these 18 sections, I believe it was, that we said that we were going to get rid of. Okay. On Monday, yeah, we did pay attention. That's why there's a lot of people here this time. It's on YouTube and stuff. So just because we're not sitting there doesn't mean that we're not paying attention. Okay. We talked about maybe decreasing a geometry or maybe decreasing a this or that. But that doesn't necessarily equate to saving money because that geometry teacher is still teaching those other 4 sections. It's not we decreased this section and therefore now we save money from that. What is that teacher doing during those times? Is she now teaching a computer lab? So instead of getting real education, we're sending them to sit in Proctor VLAX or a fluff class that nobody needs for their, to actually get their diploma? Because I don't really understand how that is working. And yes, you went line by line or whatever, but you didn't really explain how that would help us by decreasing that and what those teachers would be doing for those decreased sections. And it would take a lot of decreased sections to take away one teacher. And then you'd have teachers, what are we expecting? That we're going to have a teacher who's teaching a mix of subjects or more than they are or not their specialty. And that's going to also increase the difficulty, like you said, of kids who can't get what they need and completely screw up all sorts of schedules for all of these kids. Now we're on to VLAX. My kid took VLAX this summer. Okay, he's in honors classes, he does band. He was told if he took VLAX, he could, bust out his gym and health. Comes to school, you know what? He's taken Spanish in middle school. He doesn't know if he wants to go to college, but he knows that if he does want to go to college, he needs foreign language. So he looks, they can't fit him in any Spanish. Not if he wants to take honors classes. So now he's taking French, not because he wants to do any kind of anything with French, but just so he has the option to go to a more than mediocre school that has not yet decreased their admissions requirements. And let me tell you, VLAX, not a substitute for an actual teacher. He had, I think, 3 or 4 15-minute intervals where he had some sort of interaction. I have 4 kids. I have exactly 1 kid who would be able to do that VLAX class. The others aren't able to. They have ADHD or other issues where it's not even feasible for them to be self-directed, sit down, just read slides and absorb any kind of information. And that was a gym class. Okay. Now, if you're talking about some sort of like French or Spanish or an advanced math or science, that's absolutely ridiculous. Also, the suggestion that maybe they should go to an adult education center for some help or to get classes was also ridiculous. I am concerned, frankly, that these changes that we have proposed or that you have proposed are doing a disservice to our actual students. Now, the Budget Committee does have a responsibility, as pointed out repeatedly, to the taxpayers. We also have to remember that the parents of these kids are also taxpayers. None of us want to have our taxes be through the roof or get, sent out of the districts because we can't afford our houses anymore. But we also have a responsibility to give a free and appropriate education to our children. And some of the comments that have been made by this district or by this group, not everybody, but some people in this group, seem to lean towards that part of the responsibility is being completely overlooked. There has been comments made that seem to reflect that some of this committee have a disrespect towards the parents, the school board, and the teachers. Okay? Some examples of that would be people being upset that the UA teachers were put back into the budget last year. Again, you guys set the budget or approved the budget, and the school board listened to the parents, deliberated, understood that it would be not beneficial for the kids to take away a couple of those UAs. We didn't save all of them, but we saved, I think, 2 of them. 3. Okay, 3. We saved 3 because the school board and the families listened to the families and knew what the kids needed. It wasn't about the bottom line. It was about what the kids needed. And the fact that that was one of the first things brought up in one of the first meetings that I looked with like, oh, well, we tried to get rid of them. Oh, maybe we can get rid of them this year. Unacceptable. The comment, then we talked about the English teacher in the 6th grade. Guys were looking at how many kids were in each section. We were like, oh, I think it was 90 kids in 5 sections. Dr. Dawson was like, no, it's actually 4. It might've been 6 and 5, I don't remember. But it was 1 less. And instead of saying, oh, what did that teacher do during that other section when she's not teaching English? There was a condescending laugh. Ha ha ha, maybe I should come work here if I only have to do 4 sections. That's just ignorant and disrespectful. Let's see what else. So I guess my issue is that, yeah, you guys, some of you spent a lot of time going line by line, looking what would be best or how we could cut to the bare minimum. I mean, some of the things that you guys said for class sizes were like 25 to 30, I think at one point you said was in some sort of manual somewhere that was acceptable. It's not actually acceptable. Just because legally that's the highest that we could fit kids into a room doesn't make it ideal in any way, shape, form, would not be actually appropriate for our students, would not provide any kind of genuine good education. We have a legal and moral responsibility to these kids as well as to the taxpayers. And that includes the kids who have behavior problems, that includes the kids with special needs, and that also includes our kids that do well and can excel and be challenged and need those higher education classes. And you know what? I actually kind of like the co-op idea of using other districts and getting together, but we can't be cutting money from our program now until that is something that's already been discussed with other districts and in place, and we have a plan for that. That's like saying, like, in the future, we could close schools because we could just download all the information they need into a chip and put it in their head. So let's just do that now. It's not something that is currently happening. It is not something that we can just decide to not pay for now, because maybe someday in the future we can get together with surrounding districts and put together a program. Once that program's in place, awesome, but not before. So I guess that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to talk about the class sizes again. So this year I'm experiencing both a class with like over 22 kids and a class with little to like what I call acceptable. And the difference is huge. Like the class with like a bunch of kids, it's much harder to pay attention and we get off topic like every single 5 minutes. And it's not necessarily the teacher's fault, but it's just so many kids and we're packed in this tiny room. Again, all the desks are taken and it's so hard for me to focus and I'm sitting right in the front row. And it makes it like it's harder to ask questions and engage with the teacher. It makes you more like nervous because like there's so many kids around. When my math class, and it's not necessarily like the subject changes that like I like one better than the other, but in my math class, like there's such little kids in there that like I'm fully understanding the class. I haven't had any trouble yet. I can ask as many questions as I want, and the teacher can almost adjust the pace more because there's such little kids in there that like if one kid's like having trouble, like we can slow it down a little bit and we can like it's more like adjustable to the kids so they can learn better. And um one of the other math classes, same class, like same subject, but the different class, they have so many kids in their class that no one really understands the subject. And where it's the same like subject algebra, pre-calc. But yeah, like the kids are saying they don't understand it. It's hard to ask questions because it's math. It's hard to ask questions. You can't have so many kids in a math class. And I just want to say the difference is huge. And like, I'm genuinely excited to go to a class that has less kids because I can actually retain that knowledge and it doesn't go one ear like out the other. And also, I want to talk more about like the VLAX classes. So I was in anatomy and physiology, and I understand that situation was different, but I went to one day and we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do a lab the next day, and then I go up, like show up the next day, and the teacher was just gone, and they were like, oh, we don't offer this class anymore, and that was really disappointing to me because I cannot do VLAX just because medical reasons. I can't be looking on the screen like so many concussions. It's hard for me to learn, and I know I'd just be setting myself up for failure that way. So I cannot do that. So that was off the table. And I would have been fine with like moving it down to CP level because it was like a college level course or like at least offering a different way. But they were just like, no, it's cut. You can't do any other way. And that was really disappointing to me because I was looking into the medical field and it's too late for me to sign up for SST or anything. So I just had to completely change my schedule and I took an art class instead, which to me, those don't level out. And again, the college level class like had to boost on my GPA, and now the art level class is just not, and it's just not what I needed, not what I was looking forward to. So like just the VLAS classes, it's such like a disappointment to like go and be excited, like, oh, I'm gonna get like hands-on learning, like that's gonna be fun. And then just to find out like, oh, you have to be staring at a screen, like that's not what the kids want, and that's not like we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Kathy Rockwell, CATHYROCKWELL, Newton resident. I've emailed a bunch of you, so I felt like I should get up and at least put a face to the name. I have 3 students in the district. Well, an 8th grader, a junior, and a graduate, one who just graduated, class of 2025. So I just want to point out that the story from Monday has shifted a little bit. Monday was very focused on the number of class sizes and the number of sections. Today, it's a little bit more, okay, you're hearing a little bit of people not necessarily agreeing. It just seems like the story now is the extra funds that are at the end of the school year. So it's interesting to note that. I do want to say that the school, the administration has done a lot to increase those class sizes. I've seen it with my child. She was put into some additional honors classes, which we were definitely supportive, to help increase those sizes, right? She needed to be a little pushed, a little nudge. The school did that, right? And so they're trying to increase that class size. No one's looking, I mean, I'm not expecting my kid to be at a class size of 3. I think somebody mentioned that earlier here. No one expects a class size of 3. But on the flip side, she was unable to get into the honors, one of the other classes, the core classes, and ended up in a class that is actually like 28 or 29 kids. It's a very different learning experience than say her honors geometry class. And she has mentioned she's not getting, you don't get as much out of that. And so she's checking the graduation box. She's not really growing from that. I'm going to read it, the VLAX. I could talk forever about our VLAX experiences between my very high achieving graduate to the one that's, here now. Like, it's not for everyone. It's a tool, and it is great for those unique classes that a student is really genuinely interested in that aren't going to be available in a public high school. Completely understand, but that's really when the student's driven. It is not, and we're going to go through this, and we're going to hope that this chemistry class that is hope that she can make this through this, right? It's not the best opportunity for her from a learning environment. And I think just the last thing I wanted to mention, somebody brought up the guidance counselors. They do a phenomenal amount and can't even get to what some of the students need from them. And so I certainly think we should not be cutting any sort of guidance counselor, especially in the middle school, high school, and we should actually be adding to it. So That was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Heather Ingham, Newton, school board member. So for the past 5 years, I've been a school board member, and I do take offense to the comment that we use unexpended as a slush fund. We have implemented CCLA, we have implemented a math curriculum, we have redone the track, we have done everything with that money to better serve our students and our community. So we don't use it as a slush fund. So I did take offense to that. VLAX does not work for everyone. I know that everyone thinks that that is going to be a way to meet the gap. It does not meet the gap. And I agree, we should not be cutting guidance or other really important positions. As a school board member, I would not be agreeable to that. And it also impacts culture. Our staff are watching. And when we're listing all these people that we should be cutting and getting rid of, that brings morale down. That makes our teachers not feel valued. And we can't hire teachers. And no one, if people are looking and saying who we want to get rid of, people aren't going to want to come here. We really should not be coming from that lens. I agree. We should be fiscally responsible. We should be looking at what we're doing with the budget, but we should not be naming positions and how that will affect the students and the faculty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick Edelman, Kingston, 2 boys in the district. I won't be very long. By show of hands, can everybody raise their hand who's gone through the capital improvement plan for the school district?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm not sure how you can say warrant articles are the way to go. I've been in Kingston for 14 years. I think I heard you say 7.
Yep.
I've seen buildings crumble, sprinkler systems fail, and historic buildings be ripped to the ground because of lack of funds. Okay. So I just make sure you keep that in mind. This is an aging infrastructure. I wasn't happy with 42 million myself. I still have a lot of questions. I stood here the first time you guys met and I challenged you to go line by line to make good decisions. I think they're like we said 2 years ago that we were going to face some cuts. Everybody in New Hampshire is, right? That's no secret. I would just be careful. The saying, you cut the fat, but not the meat. Just be very careful on what cuts you're going to make, or else you will have a failing building. That plan is real, and that plan takes hundreds of thousands of dollars that have never been budgeted for. We are just fixing a fire system in the Bakey School that was being discussed before I was even on the board. I've been on for 4 years now. Okay, because funds weren't allocated and we didn't have them. All right, so that's all I have. Thank you. And I appreciate all the work you've been doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Anyone else? So before we go back to our discussion of the budget, I would point out that we did acknowledge that the special ed budget had been increased and we had no interest in cutting that at all. The only adjustments that were presented were for staff, administrators, and educators based on enrollment data. I'm not going to get into a debate about class size and performance when actually the main driver of strong performance is excellent teachers, not the number of students and whether you add 2 or 3 more to the class, which is a fact. So anyway, at some point we are going to have to reduce sections again. As you can see, we have a history of doing that consistently. So would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll start us off.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would move that we set the 2027 Sanborn Regional School budget at 39,528,000.
$39,528,000.
With the recommendation that the school board look at the aforementioned list of potential areas for reduction. I can.
I don't know.
Can we think of one more thing as we're looking at these numbers? And I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. I'm not saying, I don't think anybody in this room loves their taxes going up. But I think the things we need to look at is we're looking at big overages like last year. As Dr. Dawson pointed out, we had a spending freeze that was exceptionally high. We looking at fiscal year 2021. That was exceptionally high. But let's think about fiscal year 2021. We were still being affected by COVID. So I don't think we can focus. I think if we're really going to focus on the overages, we need to disregard fiscal year 2025 and we need to disregard fiscal year 2021 and focus on the other 3 years of overages. Because in reality, those are more reasonable overages. Are they a lot? Yes. But for the district, they're not that crazy of a number. It's just my personal opinion, but I think we need to disregard 2021 and 2025 because those had exceptions that were well out of the norm.
I think I can help with that a little bit. The fiscal 21 budget was voted on Tuesday, and our last day of school with students and live in the building was Friday. And there was also a tremendous amount of federal funding that came in, I believe, during the year of 2020 and 2021. So I think it's fair to say that that's a significant outlier over the last 5 years or so.
Yeah. So I just think we need to not focus on those when we're trying to figure out the money that's being returned because those are not the standard numbers that we should be looking at.
So we have a motion on the table for an appropriation of 39,528,000.
I second that.
Amy.
Discussion?
That's a reduction by roughly 2.6 million. Is that a reduction of roughly 2.6 million from the proposed?
Yeah, approximately.
I think it's too big of a reduction. I think we're going to start cutting it too close.
But, go ahead.
I was going to say, I personally was coming into this thinking that staying level funded from last year would be where we should be at. With the addition of adding into those special funds that need to be bolstered up a little bit. I think that's where we need to be at. I think going backwards below what we were at for 2025, 2026, I think would be a little bit too deep of a cut for us.
It wouldn't cover the health insurance increase.
Bob, could you explain, or Marie, why, like, where the jump to 42,135 primarily comes from?
Yep. Happy to.
Just to refresh.
Yep. I just need to go back to my slides here real quick, which we amended for the budget committee. So the default budget as revised, because we got the health insurance piece immediately after the presentation was made, like the next day or the day. Actually, I think it was even that day. The default was 42.78 million. We proposed after that same adjustment, 42,135,000 or so for the budget. And so just doing the quick math here,
It was 640 less than default.
Right, so we were $640,000 under default. And then we,
And that default is driven by contractual
The
Yep.
def-
obligations,
The default takes the actual fiscal 26 budget,
right?
and then you have to add contractual agreements, which is all the teachers' increases, this paras increases, plus health insurance increases and special ed costs,
Right.
just to get to default. Those are all our contractual agreements.
right, and that includes $1.5 million in employee benefits, which is mostly driven by the 19.8 average percent increase in health insurance,
Mhm.
Which is a contractual obligation that we have to pay. If we do reduce employees, that would come down a bit, of course. We had a special services increase of just under $600,000 in that line. Our SST, we have a contract and obligation to do the to send our kids to SST if they choose. There's 36,000 in there. And then there's a bus situation, and our auditing expenses also went up. Those are about $89,000 for those two. So the adjustments to the default were $2.248 million. And those are not things that we really have discretion over. Those are things that we have to include in the default budget to get to that point. So if we look at the difference between the 39,528 that was just proposed and the default, math real quick,
It's 3,247,000.
3,247,000.
That's insane.
I guess the reason I asked that was just to highlight the fact that this isn't just this number of 42, 135, 541 isn't just a, well, it's a new year, let's jack it up. It is a reduction. It is an active reduction from what could have been higher due to everything driven by contractual obligations and health insurance costs and things that we can't get out of.
Correct.
So Rick talked about cutting fat, not cutting meat. I think Bob already started that as far as I'm concerned, and Marie. These things are, it's not just that these numbers are there for fluff and for fun and for, well, let's see what we can do. These are real numbers. And my perspective is that I totally get in the way, I know why you went at the budget the way that you did, because the only way to bring that number down is personnel, because all those contractual obligations are tied to people, which is the thing, right? I guess to sum up, I guess I'll say this. A comment was made earlier about the committee looking at the bottom line and not doing what's best for kids. And as far as I'm concerned, the reason I'm on the school board, the reason I'm here, is that if we don't think the bottom line is doing what's best for kids, I don't know what the hell we're doing. That's it.
Micah, I don't believe anyone on this committee thought that this was just a 42 million pulled out of that. I know most of us spent many hours pouring line by line. I went through every one of these pages, and Dr. Dawson made his proposal and showed why he felt those were the legitimate numbers. I don't think any of us think that was just fluff or pulled out. It's just things when enrollment is down and taxes go up and cost per student goes up by significant percentages, there just has to be some cutting somewhere.
That's true. I mean, that's as far as I'm concerned, a conveniently abstract way of looking at it. When we look at these numbers like cost per pupil, cost per this, number of students, there are realities that happen inside these walls that don't matter whether there's 15 or 17 kids in a class. The whole building has to be heated. The whole building has to be repaired, regardless of whether or not there's fewer students in the gym. The whole gym roof has to be done. We can't, right? So there's realities that don't hinge on reduced enrollment. I know that I'm fighting a losing battle here because there is everybody's going to have to face that reality at some point as soon as it drops low enough. I think, though, if my perspective on this is that if we can stem the tide for long enough, the tide is turning a little bit. If we can just get behind it a little bit and we can keep pushing forward, we can maybe start to increase what we're losing. But it's not going to happen if we start slashing at it.
Yeah.
I said I was done. I really am. No.
So we have a motion on the table and we have declining enrollment as everyone figured out when I showed my slide tonight.
Mhm.
Despite some of them going up a little, a lot of them are going down. So class sizes are shrinking. So the motion is to approve $39,528,000 for the 2027 budget. So if there are is no further discussion on this, let's just take a vote on this first motion. All in favor? And opposed? So let's get another motion.
I motion to approve at 40.5.
See, I didn't hear that.
I motion to approve at 40.5.
Did you say 40.5 million?
Please, yep.
What was the one for 26?
I'll second that.
40 and a half was, so that's basically the same as what we had for fiscal 26, but 40 and a half.
Yeah, it's $27,000 off.
Let's see.
So that looks like it's 500,000 less than the number I was looking at after taking out the 5%. It was 41 million, so. I can support that, thank you.
I would also support this one as actually coming in this evening. That had been in my head. If we could level fund it from last year, I could live with that. With all of the other issues that I felt we needed to address, at least if we don't increase it from last year's. And that one would make sense.
I can support that.
Should we have a vote?
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have warrant articles as well, so. Awesome.
Oh, I'm all in favor of that idea. Absolutely.
Too.
And you would suggest it.
It's risky, we need to trust the.
Well, then we have to make sure that the information gets out,
Sure.
that the voters need to know what the importance of the warrant articles.
Right. Any further discussion?
My main concern is just not falling behind, as was mentioned with the buildings, if they do start falling apart too much, then we're going to be spending infinitely more money trying to get it back up to where it should be. So again, it's up to the school board of where the funds do get allocated. But from our side, in the estimates for fiscal year 28 and 29 are under 1,000 students. Fremont's completely gone. And unless we're doing anything to bring additional families and children to our district, there's only so much that I would want the budget to go up to. We're under 1,000 students and we're in 2029 and we're asking for $50 million. I just don't want it to keep increasing up to that point of, well, the taxpayer will just approve it.
Would you feel more comfortable if it was a little bit higher?
I would.
Throw a number out there.
So with the warrant articles, again, it's a risk if we do want to add in, $500,000 each to them. And again, just to confirm, the warrant articles with that extra, with those funds can only go to what they're allocated to, right? So the $1 million, say, in the fund for capital improvement must go to capital improvement.
Correct.
Okay.
We've actually been using those funds.
We understand. And my worry is that we're asking for $7 to $10 million to replace a roof that's going to have to be replaced within the next few years. And that's going to be a huge chunk of change that we really haven't set enough aside for. And that's why I'd like to see the capital improvement fund be improved to make sure that we kind of have money for stuff like that. Because if we're more prepared for the future, and when things like this come about, it's not a huge hit to our wallet then, because it's small warrant articles to make up the difference. But if we have to come up with the whole thing out of our pocket right away, that's a huge chunk of change and a huge nut to swallow right there. So,
Is that the,
Can I'm getting a look across the,
yeah,
the roof.
yeah, this is important.
The roof project is a little different than what I think. It's convenient to say the roof. It's the roof and the HVAC.
Okay. Yeah,
Of the
exactly.
system.
Yep.
And so
To do it properly, with the HVAC units would have to be replaced at the same time because they're 21 years old as well. And they're
I think you do roof and then the HVAC system is it.
and you have to remove the HVAC units to be able to do
Nodding
it
at me, good.
properly. And that's why it would
And
have to be
we've-
all done.
We've
to be-
gotten, yeah,
Make sure
come
you
back to the,
decisions that are being made. The decision that was made was we had a study done on what it cost to repair those units for over a 5-year span. And it was, I want to say it was like $100 and some thousand over 5 years. So we made the decision to put a Band-Aid on it and
Yep.
not spend $7. We know we don't have it, right?
Right.
right. So the,
So, but eventually, not gonna be able to get parts for those units. And we're
Yes.
gonna have to replace. And then to your point, when you do the units, you should do the roof.
Right.
Because you have cranes, everything else, they'll destroy the roof, like you want to do them both.
It's more cost effective to do both at the same time.
Yep.
And I think we're in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 million is what we've heard.
that's the roof.
I know. I was
And
just, trust me.
that's the, that's
That's HVAC
and the HVAC.
Right.
And that
However,
was the estimates that we got, was replacing those with today's equivalents of those things. So they don't include any kind of upgrades or except for those that are naturally part of newer technology, newer things that have been developed since they were put in 20 years ago. But yeah, it's a lot.
if I may add,
Yes.
right at the moment, if the roof were to fail as was suggested when we did the round robin.
Yep.
And that it would be $1 million fee to fix just that one part of the roof.
Yep.
The district already has $781,292 set aside that could be spent tomorrow on that.
Mhm.
So
It's a big roof.
I would endorse supporting adding $250,000 to the capital improvement and maintenance reserve fund. So that they have that money and don't have to touch their budget. I have no problem with bringing the special education expendable trust up to an even $1 million. That to me, I believe, is something that we could easily sell to the voters, and I believe the voters would support.
I just think it's responsible to make sure that we have that in
Yeah.
there.
And quite honestly, 40.5 million is, I believe, responsible. It's an increase over this year's budget.
No, it isn't.
No, the
Yeah,
40,
I think that is a sustainable. I threw out my number just to
Get the conversation.
get people
going.
talking.
Gotcha.
think and unless I'm reading it incorrectly, your 40 and a half is what, it was the
Effectively be
27.
$27,000 less.
Yes, well, okay, 27,000, but it,
So it's
yeah.
even, if we want to make it that it's
it-
40,527,550.
But I absolutely support the funds, and I know you could most likely sell the capital improvement funds as a warrant article, people will vote for things like that.
I not
understand
so
that.
they will.
Well,
Because
However, we do not generate
no.
warrant articles. That's not the,
Who generates that? Did those come
those
directly
have to come from the school board unless they're citizens petition.
or petition?
Or a petition.
Right. But also remember that the facilities use revolving fund, unless something is fundamentally changed, should be getting a major increase because the rental of the old middle school is supposed to go into that revolving fund.
It has been going into it.
Right. So that
It's not a huge, it's, what is it? What's the,
It's 12,000 a month for SLC and about 6,000 a month for SCA.
yeah, we chew through those pretty quick on the building and maintaining the buildings. Like for example, in one of the finance and facilities subcommittee meetings where you mentioned the rooftop units, when we heard the $7 or $10 million estimate, we were like, whoa. So we said, before we commit to that, how much are we spending per month or per, over the past 6 months to put Band-Aids on these units up here? And that was something to the tune, Rick helped me, 100 grand over 5 years. So I mean, if you think about a lot of that, and that's just rooftop units on this building. It's going to go up. There was the memorial roof. There was, just countless projects. So I think that we're using it faster than it gets funded.
I've run buildings my entire life. I don't know how you run a building without a line for building repair. Insane.
We were running
Exactly.
a budget without a line item for technology for replacing students' Chromebooks when they reached end of life, right? So we budgeted for that that's a line item now that wasn't there before, and we were doing it by taking, what we could legally from where we could to fund those things.
Did you make a motion, Brooks, on that?
I did.
and it's been seconded.
Pam seconded it, I think.
Yes, any further discussion on this proposal?
I was wondering, you asked a question of the gentleman on the end about what number he was comfortable with if you wanted to amend your motion.
Correct.
Just a question to Dr. Dawson before that. So we do have these contractual obligations for the fiscal year 2027 budget that we're proposing here.
Correct.
For the fiscal year 2028, is it a same amount of increase for all that?
To know that, you would need to know what's the insurance increase we're going to see, because the teacher contract has, I think we have one more year on the teacher contract.
And then renegotiations.
Right.
I think we're negotiating next year with the teachers.
Yes.
So it would depend on that.
Mm.
The special ed costs, very unpredictable year to year as to what we're going to have with, in particular, what we're seeing a lot of is out of district placements, which are big hits. They can be $250,000 a student kind of hit on the budget. And items like that are very hard to predict. Like SST is easier. We've got a really big number in there, so that probably is going to level out, let's say. And we have other contracts coming up, like the principals and administrators contract is up this year. And if we drew that over 3 years, that would be included in default. So it does change a bit every year.
Right. So that includes,
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fair.
so the support staff will add to that too next year.
Thank you.
I don't know, because again, if I knew that the 42,135,000 was going towards, if I knew that was going 100% towards getting ahead of the problem, I wouldn't have as big of a problem with that big of an increase. Because if over the next, say, 5 years, the numbers were a little higher, But then for the next 15 after that, we could potentially lower it. Again, with the lowering student populations, we don't want this building to fall and crumble at the 25, 30-year life cycle here. Now, I'd prefer this to be a 50-year school if at all possible, if we don't get sucked into any other mega school projects in the area. But that's the question with all looking over the budget, all the line items going, new items, again, rolling up from previous larger funds into individual line items. Absolutely great to know where the money is going. But I don't know, I wonder if it's not a guarantee, but it's just if say, okay, 2.5 million of that was going to go towards making sure that in 5 years, when we do need to replace the roof and everything else, we would be in a good spot. I don't want it to be, okay, we're doing this. Well, we didn't put enough money away, so now the taxpayer needs to front an extra 6 million. That's kind of where I'm at of, we have this opportunity to get ahead. We should take it where possible. We just need to make sure that we're doing it smart, not just, again, keeping the budget the same, needing to make cuts some places, not others, and just making sure that, things work out in 5-10 years. I don't want this to be a year-over-year thing where, again, constant fights, not enough money, and again, exploding budgets with dwindling student populations while everything else around us crumbles.
During the round robins, we were informed that to do the entire roof with the HVAC was $10 million. That is never going to be sitting in a capital reserve fund. That is going to require a bond. That is just outside of what we could afford. We did at one time build an addition to the then existing middle school. That was roughly $1 million, and the taxpayers agreed to take that as a one-time hit on their taxes so that it did not have to be a bond issue. And at that time, that project came in on time and under budget, which was an unusual feature in public buildings.
But I think we have to remember too, we had things like the middle school repairs failed, which is why we now have middle school and high school all in one building. Because we couldn't count on voters voting to fix what we needed fixed. So that worries me.
There is also an assumption that we would do a bond and do all those things at once, where given they could be batched. You know what I mean? Like you do 2 1 year, 2 the next year, 2 the next year. They don't need to all be in sync. You'd have some cost savings doing it all at once, but it might not be worth the single hit of a bond. You know what I mean? The interest on a bond, for example. But that's, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that there's going to be a $10 million bond at some point. There may be ways around that we can be more thoughtful about it.
So to address Shane's question, just to make sure that I'm also clear on this, if we were to recommend the 42 million and you said to try to get ahead of the problem, and if you were sure that 2.5 million of that would go towards the roof, we have no control over that. All we would be doing is saying, okay, here's your 42 million. You can do however you want to spend it. And then we have no control over making sure that any of that portion goes towards replacing the roof in
one or
2 or 3 years.
Only the legislative body can create a capital reserve fund. The school board cannot take $2 million and stick it in a bank account and say that's being held for something.
Yeah, if it's not spent, the money goes back.
So, that's something that if the school board wanted to put in a warrant article to create a capital reserve fund for specifically that purpose, then you know, we get to vote whether or not we support it or not.
Yeah, if the roof caved in during that budget year, then we could use $2.5 million to fix it. But if it's not used, it has to go back. Can't be saved for later.
Yeah.
But that's different from the operating budget, which we're discussing here.
Shane, would you feel more comfortable with a higher budget?
I'd be more comfortable with, say, 41.5. Again,
Can I amend my motion to 41.5?
We didn't vote on your other motion.
I'm amending it.
Oh.
I think
Then we'll vote on the amendment.
Somebody else will have to
Vicky
second it
amended.
because I cannot
Person
go
who
to
moved.
41.5. That is way in excess of.
Can I ask a quick question? So we're proposing these lower budgets with the talk of warrant articles, but we don't have the ability to propose or create those warrant articles.
We do as citizens.
Yeah, you
Right,
can
with
go
the,
to
with the petition. So, but otherwise, if the only other option, right, would be for the school board to propose these articles if we're not going to do it with the petition. Because the reality is, timing wise, do we actually have enough? If we can't get the school board to agree with us, not saying that they won't,
Be
but just
nice.
saying,
Be nice to me and we'll see.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. If you want to cut the budget and we're going to hope that the school board proposes these warrant articles, or we got to rely on petitions. Timing wise, do we really have the time to go around and get these petitions done in time to get these warrant articles? The reality is time's going by quickly. I just think, I'm just putting it out there as, like I said, playing devil's advocate. We got to think of everything, because if we're focusing on these numbers, because in our heads, there's going to be a warrant article to make up that, what we're cutting, and that no warrant article happens, then we kind of went against what we
Micah,
proposed.
the representative of the school committee, I would assume that you all would think that would be a very good idea to increase that funds by asking for warrant articles.
As a last resort, yeah.
As a last resort?
I think it would be better to build those things into the budget.
Oh, you want those, you prefer to have those things built into the operating budget?
I mean, I would prefer to adopt the budget that Dr. Dawson has presented to us.
I think what Terry is asking is if the school board can get behind putting together warrant articles to increase those special funds that we're talking about.
Yeah.
To bolster those funds up.
I mean, I remember I said at the beginning when I gave my statement that we, look forward to continuing a collaborative and relationship with the budget committee. And though the committee isn't legally empowered to make certain, decisions about how the budgets are made, we do care what the perspective is, of course.
Typically, yeah.
What?
Last year was one because it was a Paris contract. And didn't want to ask for too much. Those funds have to be funded. We are using them. So I, for one, will be asking contributions to every single one.
Madam Chair, I just have to say, since I endorsed the previous, I cannot endorse 41.5. That is, I believe that is basically maintaining the status quo, because I believe it's an unsustainable number. And I could not recommend that to the voters.
Can you get behind 41 even?
I could go 39.9. I saw
This, I
40,
think we're
40,
being sort of,
comma 9.
But you said you went 40 and a half. What's another 500,000?
well, how about 40? What's 500,000 less? I mean, we're being.
Yeah.
But we're splitting hairs over half
Oh.
million dollars here. And
Well, I would say you could call it splitting hairs, but it feels very different in one direction than it does in the other.
absolutely. It's
So-
a wallet a little less one
Right.
way or the other. But for sake of everything and not making
Mhm.
ton of cuts in going with Dr. Dawson's budget.
Yeah. Close.
Close to it,
Budget-ish.
budget-ish. I can get behind the 41 even. Little less than he's asking for, but it's a little more than James is putting out there, and more or less meet in the middle.
41 million is a 600
Mhm.
and 78 $678,000 increase over this year's budget.
But it's 1.1 less than he's proposing.
Yeah.
Right.
Listen, I'm just as broke as everybody else here paying my tax bill, but
I could probably do 40. You go above that.
I think,
And
well,
with what we're talking about as
mean
potential
41
warrant
even?
articles, it would,
Well, if I remember, the last motion that was made was 41.5,
yes,
Correct.
and you seconded that.
Yeah.
I think we're
Correct.
just,
And I don't think I can do a second amendment on it. It would
No, I
have
don't
to be
think so.
voted on now.
well,
Yeah, I think we should.
Have to be voted
no,
down.
you're the originator. You can amend your number as long as you want.
So I'd like to remind you that my number, taking away any percentage reduction due to unexpended balance concerns, was 41,028,910. With all my data-driven reasons for doing this, and I'll take all the heat on Facebook too.
I think we should vote on that.
I will amend it for a second time then, and go to the 41. What's the number again? 41,028,910.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Should we go to vote?
What was that number again?
It's right here. It's 41,028,900.
Okay. 41,028,910.
1.746. That's what I have.
Yep.
Any further?
I look at that and say, gee, it's about $1 million less than what they proposed, and we've worked countless hours in trying to convince them and trying to find ways to cut the budget and to start to get better fiscal control over the operating budget. And that number looks very close to the number that was requested from school boards. I would not support that number. But you don't need unanimous approval of this budget.
No.
No, we're trying to reach a consensus of a middle ground. Am I thrilled with the idea of 41 million? Not really. Do I think it should be lower? Definitely. Will I be able to support this? Yes. It may affect my support for capital reserve fund increases, but those are separate.
I preferred the idea of trying to keep the budget as it was with no increases, but increasing the capital reserves for things like roofs and special ed and the things that we know are going to be.
One of
The signing is
one of the
failing.
ways that we can recommend
It's a building envelope.
for the capital
envelope.
reserve funds is
Building envelope.
they be funded out of the unexpended fund balance. Which
I know, I thought
which
that had
I
to go.
personally believe in $41 million is going to be a substantial amount. of money. But that is my belief.
Right.
When I looked into my crystal ball and tried to guess at what next year was going to cost.
So we've got a motion on the table. Any further discussion? $41,028,910. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. So next Wednesday, Thursday, the 11th is going to be a concert night, so we will not meet on the 11th. I do not know if the school board would like to meet with us, have a joint meeting about our number here, but we'd have to do either Wednesday, the 10th or Tuesday, the 9th.
The 9th is also there's a
Yeah.
concert here. on the-
Wednesday, the 10th, then.
Board has a regularly scheduled meeting on the 17th.
Okay,
I can't speak for the board. I'm just stating a fact.
right.
I can't speak for all of them in that regard, but in terms of scheduling, but I think that, again, in the spirit of collaboration, it'd be great to meet together.
I'd like to be at this one this time.
Yeah.
I had prior engagement.
Of course. Yeah, it'd be good.
That's an open night for everything else that's coming.
So
Yeah.
Wednesday, the 17th at 6 o'clock,
That's your next meeting, right?
Yeah.
17th.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 PM.
6, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, earlier the better.
Yeah.
4:30 comes quick.
Okay, I guess that's what we're tasked with doing this evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for your help. Thank you so much to those who showed up tonight. We represent about 11,000 people in Newton and Kingston, and we have 15 people tonight here. So we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Seconded.
Aye.
Aye.